What's up, dude?
How's it going, man? Excited to be here.
First of all, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big day today.
So, Josh, for the people out there who are listening who don't know anything about you,
Nothing.
can you give me a quick little intro?
Yeah. Name is Josh Berendes. I am a adventure travel director of photography and documentary filmmaker. A lot of my work is like, I'm not on huge sets. I am being put out in the middle of nowhere in a remote place. Oftentimes, I'm not just there filming. I'm having to learn how to rock climb. I'm learning how to navigate white water. I'm learning how to free dive. It's like when I'm on like set, when I'm filming some random place around the world, there's a lot more there's a lot more than just filming that I'm doing. I'm trying to understand like the safety and caution and procedure and understanding climate and weather and all these other variables that go into adventure travel filmmaking. So I started off doing music and events. My dream at that moment was to go on tour, and like that was like my full-time thing. I shot music festivals, concerts, Red Rock shows, Super Bowl parties, and now I've kind of like gravitated more into adventure travel and storytelling.
Hell yeah. But yeah, tonight's a big night.
Yeah, it is. Got a big film premiere going on.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And where's that at again?
That's at Woods Boss Brewing. It's in 5 Points.
Nice.
Yep.
Do you want to just kind of dive into that
project?
Sure. And just tell me a little bit about, because I know I've been, I guess, following along. Like you showed me some early cuts. Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me about the project when you first learned about it too. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's kind of cool to see it all come together, and I can't wait to check it out and see it. But yeah, can you kind of tell me about the entire project?
Yeah. So actually, exactly 1 year ago, we were down in Mexico making this film, and the backstory is I've been wanting to get into underwater photography and video, and just like it's such a niche and drastic change from like what we do every day, right? And I was trying to find someone who I could kind of like lean on or just like get advice from and just like pick their brain about filming underwater. And there's this guy here in town, William Drum, who is a very well-known underwater photographer. And he had posted something on his Instagram about like he has an opening on this trip next week in Baja, Mexico. And I got home one night, was sitting on my couch, like exhausted, late at night. I was like getting ready to go to bed. I saw his Instagram story and I was like, do I make a pitch deck and like throw out an idea of making like a short film about him, or do I just go to sleep? And I ended up making the pitch deck, sent it to him, woke up the next morning with an email from him, and he was just like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And 1 week later, we had never met prior to this. We were in Mexico making this film. So
crazy.
Super last minute. I feel like that's a lot of my projects, as you know, like sharing office with me is super last minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went down to Mexico, and prior to this, I had never filmed underwater, and I had never been free diving. I'd only been scuba diving like twice. So yeah, it was like a huge, just like, all right, let's do this. It was a huge send. And yeah, we spent 5 days down in Baja, Mexico. We were on the Sea of Cortez, about like 3 hours north of Cabo, in a little town called La Ventana. And there was a major Mobula ray migration. So all these like the little like sea rays that you see that jump out of water, that's what was going on. It was like this massive migration, so thousands of them. And with that brings all types of wildlife too. So
right,
we saw whales, we swam with sharks. And it was like pretty crazy experience, like being next to a shark and like not knowing what I'm doing. And like I didn't know, like I had no context for anything.
Right.
Like, I didn't know, like, is this a crazy moment? Is this like, should I be scared? Should I be nervous? Like, there's like this shark here, and you just have to like act, be casual and calm. But I remember like being on the boat like later that day, and in my head, I'm like, should I be scared right now of this shark? And I was like, just be calm. And then like a couple hours later, the people on the boat were like, yeah, like that one shark was being like a little weird. And like, yeah, I was getting like a little close to us. And I was like, okay, so like that was kind of like a moment of like to be a little nervous.
Yeah. So wild.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, I was quite literally diving down, holding my breath as long as I can. Like I didn't do like any proper, like, I didn't know like proper breath work to get you ready for like holding your breath as long as possible. There's like a whole like, you think you just like dive down, but there's like a whole like form of like propelling your body forward and your legs up to use like your momentum of your body to push you down. So I'm like learning that as I go along. I'm like fumbling with like camera settings underwater, like while I'm trying to hold my breath and have composition. And
So you didn't have like scuba gear on.
No.
You were just free diving.
just free diving.
I guess I didn't even really realize that.
Yeah.
Until now. Kind of rewinding, because I remember when you first told me about the project and you're like, oh, I just put this pitch deck together and I'm pitching it to this guy. And I was like, that's sick. And then you landed it. But from that moment of this photographer, William Drum, he's shot a lot of cool projects. He shot the cover of Billie Eilish's album, not her most recent one, or maybe it is.
Yeah, I believe her most recent one.
Okay, yeah, where she's like underwater
And it's like the door up top.
the door, like that was all real. That wasn't in Photoshop.
Yeah.
So this guy, William Drum, he is based here in Denver. He's a photographer, and he shot that album cover for her, which is insanely cool. Going back and just talking about diving in, like you
Pun
had
intended.
right, and I want to jump into the filmmaking side of it, like what it's actually like shooting underwater, because I've never done that before. But you know, he sees the pitch deck, he accepts it, and then what happened from there?
Yeah, so ideally what I wanted to do was I kind of pitched him two things. Was like he was putting together this trip and he had never like put together trips. He just goes on his own trips, but this was kind of like his first attempt of like, hey, I'm going to this location. I got this Airbnb, this guiding service, everything's lined up. You know, you pay a fee for all that stuff. So I was like, we could like promote like the trip, or we can do what I wanted to do was like tell a personal story of who you are and what you do, you know, that human connection. Right. And he was like, no, let's do that. I'd rather do that than like promote a trip. Because I don't think he was really interested in doing trips. He just kind of happened to decide to do this. And so after I sent him the pitch deck, you know, I came up with ideas of like what to talk about, like what's your journey, who you are. Or they're like, you know, I don't want this to be just like I'm an awesome photographer and I make cool images around the world. Like I want to like, what's your story? What are you going through? Like, is there any, you know, things that you're struggling with or things that you've overcome? You know, because like the whole thing with like storytelling is like, no one wants to hear about how awesome and how cool you are and how successful your images are. You know, it's that human connection, that relatability. When you watch a film is like, I don't do what this person does, but I can relate to them on a human level, right? So I kind of came up with some mock interview questions. I was like, hey, I see this as like a short film, and I don't know if I want to do like a sit down interview. I think what I want to do is like sit down and do an interview, but then take those interview answers and make it into like a script and like narrate this film. So ideally I was kind of like, you know, the whole thing with like filmmaking, like words on paper come first before you film. So I just kind of wanted to hear his story and hear him talk to kind of like think, okay, I could get a shot of this. I can get a shot of this. Well, that didn't happen. We, you know,
Classic.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, let's do it. And then just like, I mean, it was a week head notice. So we just had a lot of stuff going on. So I went down to Mexico with like no script, no interviews, no nothing. And we just filmed.
You were just winging it.
I was just, like literally just flying by and like, I'll figure this out as we go along.
Right.
I really would have liked to do an interview and just hear him talk.
Yeah.
Just to like, you know, like get those images in my head. But that didn't happen. So
Do you feel like that was an advantage in some respect where it wasn't like super scripted out and you were able to just feel it out as you went?
Yes and no. I think I look back at a lot of my projects, especially like the adventure travel stuff. that's like kind of like the reality of how they go sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like you're filming first and then you're like kind of figuring out the story as you're filming.
Yeah.
Which is like true with even like a documentary. Even if I did like, we sat down, I had like a whole pre-pro document and interview questions, like it kind of, the story kind of changes as you go along. So I've done that in the past where like, okay, like we don't have time to write a script or come up with questions or do an interview. It's just like, let's go film and figure this story out as we go along.
Yeah.
And it works. I don't think it works for everyone. I think a lot of people would be like stressed out or like, this isn't the right way to do it. But I think a lot of times as you're filming, the story kind of presents itself.
Yeah.
And the reality is like the story of what he's telling necessarily doesn't have to match the shots, right?
Right.
You know, he can talk about an artistic journey and traveling the world and filming underwater. And I just have to show him filming underwater, and being on the boat and prepping his gear. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's not a matter of like the chicken or the egg. Sometimes it's the egg, sometimes it's the chicken that comes first.
Right. And sometimes, because I've been on, you know, shoots like that before, more of like a docu style where you're figuring out as you go. And I feel like it can be equally frustrating as it can be fun because you're finding the story and the shots and the shot list as you go, which, you know, depending on the situation can be stressful. But on this, and a lot of times it's honestly a mixture of both, which, you know, looking back, that type 2 fun, you're like, that was actually kind of fun. Even though in the moment I was stressed about not having that shot list or knowing exactly where the story was going. So that, I don't know, that can be kind of fun.
Yeah. It's like a fun challenge. It's problem solving on the fly, really. And then honestly too, like when you get back to editing, you get all the footage and then you can kind of like put things together, right? You kind of like find the pieces of the puzzles that match.
Find it in the edit.
Yep.
We'll figure it out in post.
Yeah.
Okay, so then jumping into, because I'm really interested, we've talked about it a little bit, but the camera operating part of it. What was your camera package, and then what was the underwater housing?
Yeah, so A7S3, my two lenses I used were the 24-70 and the 14 mil. And then the underwater housing was a Sea Frogs brand.
Nice.
Yep.
And you had never done it before, so you just kind of like jumped in.
Yeah.
And what happened on that first dive?
Oh, man, I was just like, so on that first dive, I was just like, whoa, like I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Like crazy. And it's also like, there's so many things to factor into. It's like equalizing your housing and making sure the valves are closed, and then like worrying about like condensation too, because like if you keep it on the boat and it's in the sun, the camera's running, right? So all that heat stays in the camera, so then like the camera can overheat.
Right.
Because there's no air circulation, right?
Right.
So it's all the little things like that. And unfortunately, my other camera, I forget what happened, but I had to send it in to get fixed. So when I was filming underwater and on the boat, I had to keep taking my camera out of the housing, which is a whole process. And it's like, if my hands were like damp and I put the camera in the housing and there's a little bit of dampness on the camera and I close that housing, there's condensation that's happening.
Crazy.
And it's just like, it was so, I was like doing that process like back and forth of taking the camera in and out, in and out. And it was such a headache. I would not recommend that at all.
Yeah.
Have one camera for on land and one camera just in the housing, and it stays in the housing.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the reality of the strip. So definitely like a learning lesson. Yeah, it was tough. It was like the logistics of like constantly doing that, and
like
a boat, you know, like I'm trying to put the camera in the housing, and like we got the boat's flying across the ocean, sea mist is spraying, like I don't want salt in there. And yeah.
And I can't even imagine like adjusting your settings too, like while you're underwater, holding your breath.
Yeah.
You know, checking focus,
Yeah.
ISO, like all those things. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Luckily, the Sony has really good autofocus.
Okay.
And honestly, like I can't, the way the housing is, I can't put ND filters on. So it's one of those things where I'm just cranking the shutter speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I did like shooting some stuff in 24, but then it's like you miss out on so much because like things are happening. Like I'll be facing this direction and I'll look over and there's to be a sea lion that zooms past me. And it's like, happens in a second, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
shooting, 60 frames or 120 frames. It's like you can slow those moments down that happen so quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart to shoot in the higher frame rate, and then in post you can figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had like issues too with like my housing, like one of the buttons for my ISO was like locked in. So I'm like trying to film and my ISO is just going from like 100 to 60,000, just like it's just cycling through.
my
So
God.
like underexposed, overexposed, and I'm just like trying to like shake my, holding my breath, shaking my housing, like trying to jam this button to get it loose, like stuff like that, right?
As hard as it is on land, underwater, while you're holding your breath, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And like 5 days and like I'm not like, I grew up in Iowa and I live in Colorado. I don't have a lot of experience with the ocean. So like it was just like it's a whole different ballpark of being wet, getting out, hot, you're under the sun. Even like flying the drone was so difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult to fly the drone.
From the boat.
From the boat, right?
Yeah.
And because like I'm holding my breath over and over again and it's just exhausting work too, like swimming and dealing with currents and surges and stuff like that. It's just like a lot of movement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where I was like, I would get like a little lightheaded or dizzy or kind of like disoriented. So I'd be like trying to fly the drone. And most of the times I'd have to have my guide like land the drone. Like he'd have to like get the drone down enough where I could grab it. Because I couldn't, it was like the boat's rocking, the boat's moving, the wind's blowing this way. It's just like all these 3 variables constantly that you're trying to land on a tiny little boat. And a lot of times, we would see like the super pod of dolphins. Like, dude, there was like 2 instances where there was like around 100 dolphins, like a pod of them. And you just see them like jumping up and swimming underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And I would throw the drone up and I'd be like, I can't find the dolphins. Like they're right here, but I can't find them because there's no contacts or there's no landmarks.
Yeah,
right?
there's no reference.
There's no reference. It's like, it's not like, oh, they're kind of by this tree. So if I find the tree with the drone, I know they're to the left. It's like, it's just flat ocean.
Right.
And glare too, right? So it was just like, there's so many times where I was so frustrated because I'm like, I know I can see them. They're right here. They're right in front of me. But I'm like, where, it was tough.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
While you're on the boat, on the beach, like going through this project, did you ever think one day this is going to be like, I'm going to have a film premiere for this?
No, absolutely not. Because like I said, it was like everything was like so last minute.
Yeah.
And, I quite literally don't know what I'm doing in this situation. I knew I was going to make a video. I knew I was going to post that video online. I didn't really realize what I had and the potential of what I had until, I started going through the footage and editing. And I finally nailed William, to just do like a mock, like, let's sit down and just have a conversation. Let's do an interview. Then I can kind of like write a script. And we did like a whole back and forth process. And it really like depended on like how much he wanted to open up too, I wouldn't say it's not like a documentary. It's a character driven film. So it's kind of just like, it really depended on like what his story was. Cause like going into the project, I didn't really know what his story, I just met this dude at the airport to go fly to Mexico.
Wild.
So yeah, when I was making the film, it was just like, I would never have thought that I'd be having a premiere. And it's crazy how many people have reached out to me and messaged me and RSVP'd for this film.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. It's like, we have like 130 people confirmed. Which is crazy. Like I never would have thought that. Like when we first started talking about the film premiere, like it would be absolutely crazy if we got like 75 to 100 people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Going back, a couple of Midwest corn-fed boys here.
Hey.
You're from Iowa. I'm from Indiana.
Yep.
Can you kind of give me a little intro, a little backstory into how you got into this? Because I feel like, at least for me, growing up in the Midwest in Indiana, I would shoot like short films with my friends. I went to film school for a couple of years, but everything always felt so far away.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like the video world, video production, film production. So, and we live in Denver. We're not even living in LA or New York, but it seems a lot more tangible even just out here in little old Denver, Colorado. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that this morning, just perspective, like looking back on where you started. Can you kind of give me a little intro into how you got into film?
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up in a very small town in Northwest Iowa. Like I had 24 kids in my grade. Like our town had one stoplight and that stoplight broke and they just decided to put up stop signs. So that's like visually how small of a town I'm from. Wasn't really into art. Like we didn't even our school was so small. We didn't even offer art class in high school. At that moment, I had no like artistic ideas or anything like that. I just was kind of coasting through life, living in a small town. It wasn't until like I was 23 or 24 that I picked up a camera. Like I had no interest in video or photography whatsoever. I didn't know anyone who did that. It wasn't like even an option for me.
Right.
But I started going to music festivals and concerts a lot. And my friends and I were just like, we would drive like 3 hours to go to a show on a Tuesday night, come back and go to class in the morning. And I just started watching like those recap videos and it's like, man, it would be like a simple recap video from a random show on a Tuesday night, but like I loved it. And I was kind of like, man, what if I like picked up a camera and like made videos myself and then I could go to shows for free? And it was a full circle moment because most of my friends they were producing, they were in a band, they managed a venue. So there'd be moments where like one friend would be the promoter of the show, one friend would be managing the venue, and we'd have like other friends playing the show, and then I'd be doing photo and video. So it was a really cool moment of just like full circle friends doing things together. And then I got more into storytelling, and that kind of really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I went to Italy, and this was like I'm backtracking a little bit here. But before I even like started doing the music stuff, I was just like, man, I kind of want to pick up a camera, but like it was like so, like you said, like so far fetched because I didn't know anyone who did this.
I know.
And, like I had no like, is this attainable? Is this like a thing? Am I freaking weird for wanting to do this? And I was going to Italy for like 10 days through like a capstone through my community college at the time. And I was like, man, I kind of like want to make this video, like a video. Yeah. And my brother-in-law gave me a GoPro 2.
Hey.
And yeah, GoPro 2, man, I still have that on my shelf.
Nice.
And that was like the first time I knew like the song that I wanted to make a video to. And like for the first time in my life, I was like visualizing things. I'm like, like when the beat kind of starts going, I'm going to like fast forward through like the canals of Venice, and then I'm gonna like do this. And it was like the first time I've ever actually like thought about something, like creating something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had a moment in Italy, in Rome, where we walked out the Pantheon, this massive building in Rome, into like the square, and they have all these people from like different cultures and languages and backgrounds who are just, it's like, any busy street you've been on, it's just like a tanglement of like a moving puzzle, people moving, they're walking, right? A mass of people. And this guy started playing this cello, and like everyone stopped and let's like listen to this man play this cello. And like I remember I was like so nervous about like putting my GoPro like in front of him to like film him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he played this music, and it was like this beautiful song. And after he was done playing, everyone clapped, and then everyone just kept walking.
Yeah.
And I walked away from that moment, and I was just like jaw dropped, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like this right here, like it's like how many moments out there to be like captured and experienced. And yeah, it was just a very, very profound moment for me.
That's cool.
It was such a simple thing, right?
Right.
But it really changed me. And I came back home to Iowa. I applied for a university to go back to school, where I went back for like marketing, business, film, photography, just kind of like the whole overarching thing. And then I applied to art school in Florence, Italy, and went back to Florence to study for like a year.
I forgot. I actually don't know that I knew that.
Yeah. So it was like a very like, I came back home and my parents were like, how was it? I'm like, I'm going back.
Yeah.
And I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long were you there for?
I actually did a semester, which was like not enough.
Semester abroad.
Yeah, but it was crazy. I hustled. Like, I think by the time I studied abroad, I was like, everyone's like usually 18, 19, freshman.
Yeah.
I was like a fifth year senior at that point. And I was kind of like over like the whole, like, I don't care about going out and partying and all that. Like, I had 3 jobs when I was in Italy.
Wow.
Yeah. I was taking pictures at clubs like 2 or 3 nights a week. And they just paid me under the table, but free beer, some cigarettes, and like 50 euros a night.
Nice.
And then I got an internship for the school. So I was like their head photographer for like the newsletter, the magazine. I was like the only person doing video. It was cool because it was an art school. So they had like different parts of the art school. There was like the fashion, there was the business, there was the media.
Yeah.
There was like the painting and sculpting. There was culinary and baking. So it was like I was able to cover all these cool little things going on. And then I was also doing trips with it's like a organization that takes college students on like weekend trips around Europe.
Okay.
So they were like, I went on a trip with them and I was like, hey, I'm going to make this video for you guys. Like, you guys should send me on like more trips and I'll make videos for you. And they're like, okay. So then I started doing that. So yeah, it's just kind of like my study abroad experience was just like hustling. Like that's all I cared about was like, I'd walk around the streets of Florence for hours and just like taking photos. It was so cool. It was
talking about these kind of shoots that you're going on where, this last one was like a last minute thing where you did this pitch deck and then next thing you know, you're on a plane going to that location. It seems like a lot of your jobs are that way and you do a lot of these adventure type. How would you describe it? Like,
adventure travel.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you're going on these projects, it's usually just you and then maybe you and a producer or you and a director, but normally it's
usually just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got all the gear.
I'm doing everything. I'm writing the storyboard. I'm like doing the directing, the creative.
Yep.
So my ultimate goal is to work on, like bigger productions, not massive. Like I want like a small, nimble team, but like I want some brand like Yeti or Patagonia or Arc'teryx to reach out to me to go send me somewhere, right? Or, brands who want to like collaborate with, they want to like sponsor a filmmaker or an ambassador. That's like the ultimate goal. But like right now, I'm kind of doing everything myself to start doing the work that I want to do.
Yep.
And in hopes people start hiring me, but they have, they have the creative, they have the logistics, they're producing. Right now, I'm just kind of doing all that.
Yeah. But when you're going, and this was a question I wanted to ask you, is like when you're going on these shoots, filming these projects, do you think you're going into it as the adventurer, explorer first and then filmmaker, or filmmaker first, then adventurer?
That's a good question.
Where's your mind at?
I think it's the latter. I think, I'm here to film something.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
That makes sense. But very close behind is the adventurer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like when I did the Nepal trip, that was backpacking for 10 days through the Himalayas with all my gear.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge for many reasons.
Yeah. Can we dive into that? Just give me the backstory on that project too, because I was, for people that don't know, Josh and we share a co-working space called, what do we even call it?
It's Taxi, but we call it Yellow Co.
Yeah, Yellow. There's a bunch of different names, but there's a bunch of good people in there, and we've been in that co-working space for years together. But so that's how we know each other. And I see you come in with gear, or you're at your desk, and I'll just hear about these. I get all the behind the scenes, juice.
Yes.
So. Yeah, this Nepal trip, can you kind of like give me the backstory on that one too?
Yeah, so my buddy owns a guiding company, travel company, sustainable tourism. that they do adventures all around the world. So they do like backpacking, kayaking, hiking, expeditions. And his whole thing with like tourism is like, you go to a place like Tulum, right? And there's like a very dense circle of like everyone goes to Tulum.
Right.
But if you go like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours outside Tulum, there's equally cool things to do, but no money goes to those places. So he takes people off the beaten road, you know, adventures. And I kind of had this idea. Well, I'll start with, he reached out to me like 3 weeks heads up, was like, hey, do you want to go to Nepal? He has started his company in Nepal. He lives here in Denver, but the first guide he ever hired was in Nepal. He spent like 10 years off and on living there, knows the language and the culture very well. And he's like, I'm going to go back to Nepal to kind of meet up with this guide. And we're basically going to hike this expedition that he has his clients do, just to kind of like see what's working, see what can change. You know, they have vendors along the way, like people where they have lunch at this woman's house. They have breakfast here. You know, this is the lodging. So he just kind of want to go check in on all those things. And he's like, I think it'd be really cool to tell a story of, you know, this is where the company started 12 years ago. Yep. And this woman, this female guide, is like the first person he ever hired. And I was like, yeah, that's a cool story for sure. But what I've actually been wanting to reach out to him and pitch this idea of, he knows all these really cool people all around the world. And not only guides, so he only hires local guides whose family lives in those regions. And I'm not talking about like, you know, down Patagonia, he has a bunch of expeditions down there.
Which we need to get into that as well.
Yeah. So he's not like, Santiago is like a huge major city there. Like he's not hiring people from Santiago. He's hiring people like from the countryside, like people who live in these rural areas. And he's also a microfinance company. So he gives portions of his income to local entrepreneurs in the regions that they travel. So people who, you know, make quilts, people who are coffee farmers, artisans, business owners, right? So he knows all these cool people who are doing really cool things that, like, you know, they're not like famous people, they're everyday people. Yeah. And that's the stories I love to tell about, right? Because we all have interesting stories to tell. And I think when you tell a story about a random coffee farmer in Africa, it's so much cooler than like, oh, they have like this massive company and they're very successful and they're well known. It's like the everyday little people that are way more interesting than people would realize. So I was like, I saw the potential. Was like, you know, all these cool people, you have all the logistics already lined up. It's like, what if we like did a series where we made short films about cool and interesting people in remote places of the world? And he was just like, and we could find a company like, you know, like Patagonia Presents, North Face Presents, like branded films is exactly what I'm thinking. We just need to find someone who wants to fund this, because he's like still a small business, so he can't like afford to do that. And we could like, why don't we do that for this trip instead? And he was just like, yes, I'd much rather make a film about this guide because I appreciate her so much. She has a very interesting story. I don't want to be some white dude going to Nepal and making something about me. Yeah. I'd much rather have it be about the people. Yep. So that's what we're doing with the film.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so right now, you know, I've been working on this free diving film. Now that I'm done with that, I'm really going to start diving back into the editing for that Nepal film. And the challenge with that is, you know, again, it was like a 3-week head notice. I did a pre-interview with them over the phone, just to kind of talk about their story and, you know, life and culture and all that stuff. But it was such a cultural difference of interviewing someone. Like in Nepal, people are very humble and they don't talk about themselves, and they're very like direct. So like, if you asked a story about like, if I was from Nepal and you said like, what do you do, Josh? I'd be like, yeah, I make videos and I film people, and then I edit that video and then I put that video out. Yeah. There's no like overarching like storytelling, kind of like what goes into it. How do you feel? So like interviewing someone was pretty tough, and they speak good English, but it's also like a little broken English. And it was just like the whole interview process of like trying to like weave a story and get a story out of them was very difficult. And my buddy, who, like he said, he knows this guy for 12 years. He knows the language and culture and how all that works. So he kind of like led the interviews, but even then it's like, it was just really, really tough to, it's like a clash of cultures, right?
Sure.
It's like the communication, how they communicate and how we communicate is so different.
Did you find a solve for that? Like, what was the workaround?
Just ask a bunch of questions, and then like, you know, it's like, it's also like, it's documentary work. So it's like, I can sit down and ask someone a question and they kind of like give me like a 5-minute response, and I can be like, okay, can you kind of like shorten that in like,
Yeah.
you know, 2 to 3 sentences, and could you kind of say it like say they were talking about something that they were really excited about, like a moment that they were proud. I could be like, so like in that moment, you were very proud of like the work that you were doing.
Yeah.
And they were the kind of like, yeah, like, this work made me feel alive and it made me feel this.
Interesting.
That wasn't the case with them.
Yeah.
Trying to interview them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you want like, I just want them to say it was hard, because like I can take what they said, the 5-minute response. I'm like, in my head, I can chop that up, but I just need that line. It was hard. And to get them to say that line, you'd think it'd be like, they would just say it, but then they would go off about something else. And it was like they didn't quite understand what I was asking.
Right.
So it was, and then it got to the point where like in documentary, you don't want to like, you want to let the story unfold in their own way and have their who they are kind of speak. And very quickly, when you start saying too much of like, can you say it this way? Can you say it this way?
Yeah.
It doesn't turn into a natural conversation, and you can feel them change, and then they start saying things in a way that they normally wouldn't, and you don't want that.
Yeah. It's not organic anymore.
It's not organic. It's not who they are. So, I mean, quite literally, I was just like, okay, this is how the story is going to have to be, and I'm just going to have to figure it out in the edit.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because there's a lot of really good lines and things that they say in the interviews that we were doing like each day as we went along, but it's like I can't like chop that up.
Right.
Like I just can't make that work, and that's frustrating. But that's just the reality of a trip like that, when you're working with people from different cultures and the way that they communicate and how we communicate, and it's just, you kind of have to let the story just flow.
Yeah.
And, you know, figure it out in the edit. So that was like tough. That was like, we got a lot of really good stuff, but there's some things that I'm like, I just like, if only they said these few connecting words, I could put that together and deliver that line.
Yeah.
But I just can't.
Not the case.
Yep.
Going back to when you were talking about the beginning of this project, it sounds like you are creating these opportunities for yourself where it didn't really exist before.
Yep.
It's not like these people are reaching out to you and saying like, hey, can you come film this?
Yeah.
Is that something that you had to learn how to do, or was that something that you just realized along the way? You're like, oh, I can provide, this, I can take this opportunity and provide something for these clients.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just comes down to, I know what my vision is. I know what my goals are. I know where I want to be in 5 to 10 years, but the reality is those things aren't coming to me. Like you have to go out and do that work that you want to get hired for.
Yeah.
So I'm putting myself out there. I'm making pitch decks. I'm pitching ideas. Like I see the bigger picture of like, the more I do this, and yes, it's like, it's just me solo, right? I'm coming up with the creative. I'm directing, I'm filming, I'm editing, I'm color grading. Ultimately, I want to be the DP, right? Yeah. But right now, I have to do everything to get to where I want because the more brands see that I'm already doing something, they have the understanding that like, oh, like, yeah, this guy films, like his cinematography is great, his storytelling is great. We can hire him and like put they see me as the piece to their puzzle.
Right.
Right. So I don't want to be, I think that I'm always going to have projects that I am doing everything because it's just like my creative idea that I want to get out into the world.
Right.
But, the goal is to like being hired by bigger brands who have, the money, the resources, the logistics. There's a producer, there's a creative, there's a director, or I mean, I can direct too. I love storytelling. So
Yeah.
that's right now. I'm just kind of, doing it.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of ties into that at the beginning of my career, I shot a lot of spec work and it filled up my portfolio, my book that way. I found some resistance to that idea from some people who don't feel like spec work is worth it, or that you're giving certain brands free advertising. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, shooting these spec projects or passion projects?
Yeah, 100%. It's worth it because this is the work that I want to do. And the reality is, like, brands don't just find you or like, hey, like, do you want to do this thing? Like, you have to be doing the work that the brand is looking for already, right? The reality is, like, you have to go out and get what you want. You have to put yourself out there. You have to get your name in front of people and prove that you're capable of doing the work. And not only are you capable of doing the work, you're good at that work.
Right.
Because the reality is, like, especially with like travel adventure, it's such a saturated market. Like, who doesn't want to go to Indonesia and film in the tropical, like, a amazing location?
Right.
And it's such a saturated market right now.
Yeah.
And so the reality is, like, you have to like do the legwork to get to where you want to go. Like, no one's going to come to you and be like, hey, by the way, like, do you want to like start doing this thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. I did meet one person who, another guy who films, someone introduced us and we got coffee and he was just like, yeah, I had never like really even filmed film before, but he landed himself in this position where he was scuba diving with, I forget which red camera it was, in Indonesia. And he was like, yeah, I was learning how to use ISO and shutter like underwater. And it was like this major production for like this guy who shoots for Nat Geo.
Oh, like on a paid shoot?
Yeah, paid shoot.
Wow.
And I was like, that is insane. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, it's
pretty,
so, like, so many things had to align. So, like, maybe that happens from time to time, like 1 in a million. But like, the reality is, like, you have to start doing the work that you want to do.
Yeah.
So brands can see that you're already putting the legwork, that you're serious about it, that you're committed to it. So for me, it's like, and it's not, I'm not making money on these projects.
Right.
But there's so much more value than just money in our work. It's fulfilling. It's amazing. I'm pushing myself. I'm learning more about who I am and learning more about the world. And it's fulfilling. Like, it's stuff that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And the more that I do that, the more that I put that out into the universe and that energy, like, the more that things are going to start gravitating towards me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of, I already said this, but early in my career, I did a lot of spec projects, and to be honest, it led to a lot of paid work down the road. And in the moment, you don't know, you're spending time producing and organizing and casting and location scouting and producing. And did I already say producing? But, and then you're in the edit and you're like, what the fuck did I just do? This is not what I thought it was going to be. But I think going through that process, even me like starting this podcast, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but it's just kind of taking the jump and then figuring it out from there is a big part of the process for me.
100%.
But going back to the spec work, it's like,
it's a grind.
It is a grind. And it's always, even the projects that failed, that didn't work out, I still learned a lot from that.
Exactly.
And so there's nothing, I don't think it's time wasted in the end.
Yeah. Well, I see you have the Creative Act by Rick Rubin over there. And he talks a lot about that. Like, just make something and get it out and put it behind you. And like, not everything you make is going to be the best thing. And that's like what I've struggled with in the past too, is like this idea of perfectionism is like, the reality is, like, it's not sustainable that every single thing you make is going to be better than the last project. So just like, get it out, do it, like, do the work, write the script, shoot the spec work, realize that it's all part of the process. It's the bigger picture that we're after. It's not just like project by project, like, this is gonna be better than the last. And that can be tough with what we do as like artists and creatives. It's like, we want that to be the case, because ultimately we're putting something out there for people to judge it.
Yeah, you feel vulnerable.
100%, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the idea of like, this has to be good.
Right.
Otherwise people aren't going to like it. And
Yeah.
you know what? If people don't like it, like it's part of the process, but it's so hard to like just learn to let go of that.
Mm-hmm. What is it? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I might be misquoting that, but
Something like that. I mean, that sounds right.
it can be.
Yeah.
It definitely can be. Don't be too precious with your work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to hear about Patagonia.
Yeah. Patagonia was a cool trip. It was definitely different than any of my other filming projects. It's not super exciting. It was first of all, it was like a 3-day head notice. 2 days like confirmed. And really I was there, same friend who I did the Nepal trip with. And, there's no time to like tell a story or anything like that. And
right.
There was no individual that I was filming specifically. Mm-hmm. So I was like, basically, there was like maybe 9 people who were on this trip. One person canceled last minute. So he had an opening on this trip. And he was just like, well, why don't I just send Josh down there and he can shoot some stuff that we can use for like social, like Instagram Reels.
Yeah.
And we didn't want, an unrelated story is like, I went to Croatia like years ago. I filmed a guided trip. People who agreed to be filmed suddenly didn't want to be filmed. And it's totally understandable. These people are paying like thousands of dollars to go on this once in a lifetime trip. They don't want to be filmed,
You
right?
don't want a camera guy in your face.
Yeah. And it's not like, I can't be like, hey, like, could you like adjust your shirt and then like, could you go walk over there and then do that 3 times? Like, this is like a vacation for people.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be very like hands off and not intrude on other people's experience.
Yeah, excuse me, sir. That yellow shirt is not working for me. It's clashing against the background of the mountains. Can you quickly go change?
Yeah. You can't do that. Like, it's not that type of shoot. It was basically a free backpacking trip. That was kind of like more like a vacation, but like the reality is like I was filming a lot and it was just like
it's a lot of work.
It was too much. And that's on my end too. Like, I remember like back when I filmed weddings, like way back in the day, someone asked me to like, hey, we don't want you to film the whole wedding. We want you to just be like a guest, but like we would like, we want like the first look. We want the mother-daughter in the dress, and we want the speeches. Like those are the 3 things that we want. Mm-hmm. It still turned into a full day of filming, right?
Always does.
And obviously, like, I'm there. I have a camera. Like, I want to, like, I see a cool moment happening. I'm like, I'm going to go capture that.
Right.
And that's like the reality of like what this trip was. It was like, it was a lot more work than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
But it was a cool experience.
Yeah.
Patagonia was beautiful. I would love to go back.
Yeah, the photos that you showed me were insane. And there was one story behind one of the photos that you were showing me. I think you were sitting at like a mountain lake for hours, waiting for the clouds to clear to see the mountains.
Yeah.
That was a cool little story.
Yeah, so that was like the second day. If you've seen pictures, we're in Torres del Paine National Park, which is a very famous national park down in Patagonia. And if you've seen pictures of that national park, you've seen pictures of this rock formation. It's like 3 massive columns that go way up into the sky.
Yeah.
Massive slabs of granite. And there's like a glacier lake below it. So me and a guy who I met the night before at camp, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get up at like 3 a.m. and get to the top of this by sunrise. And he was like, cool, I'll join with you. Like this dude from London. And we got up. And we woke up at like 3:30 in the morning, and it's just downpouring. Like it sounds like someone's dumping buckets of water on my tent. And I'm like, like I knew, and we knew like there was like a 99% chance of rain. But the fact that we woke up and it was already raining like that, we were kind of like, do we do this or not? And we kind of like putzed around a little bit. There was other people waking up in the campsite who were like committed to going. Once we saw more people were going, like, okay, let's do it. And it was like 2 hours of hiking in the rain, in the dark with headlamps. And you never know, right? Like in conditions like that, you can get an opening in the sky for like 2 minutes, right? And it just beautiful sunshine pouring through, the clouds light up, especially in Patagonia. The weather, like people say the weather changes in Colorado really quick. I mean, I feel like any mountain terrain, they say that, but in Patagonia, it changes so quickly. So, you know, I'm there to film. I might as well do the work and show up, and you never know what may happen.
Yeah.
So we get to like the top, and it's starting to get light out, but it's just fog. Like I'm like climbing up this mountain, and the valley across from me is just fog. There's no sky at all. And we get to the top. I start scrambling to the top, and it starts snowing. And we sat there for like, ended up sitting there for 3 hours. Like I'm soaking wet, like I'm sweat, like all my clothes are just full of sweat because of like the rain jacket and everything. My outside's wet. I'm shivering. It's cold. But we just like sat there, and it's funny because it started to clear up a little bit, like across this valley. Like we're looking up, we're at this lake. We're like literally huddled behind these massive rocks because it's windy too. And we're just waiting. We're just waiting. And we look to the right, and we see like the valley open up. I mean, the sky shows, and you can see the snow and the mountains on the other side. And then we look up, and you start to see the clouds breaking a little bit. Mm-hmm. So after like an hour and a half of that, all of a sudden I got like this boost of energy, and I just started walking around taking photos. It's just like it clicked, right? When I'm on trips like this, it's like there's so many moments where I'm like mentally and physically just so exhausted and beaten that like I can't be creative.
Right.
Like I just don't have that juice to go.
That brain power's gone.
It's gone. But then like I got my second wind, and all of a sudden, dude, like an hour and a half flew by. And there were so many moments where we thought the clouds were going to break, and they just never really did. But there was still like, he was bummed. I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, this is like part of like what exploring and going on adventures is. It's like, you don't always get that money shot.
Right.
But like, the reality is I didn't get to see these massive columns that were poured in golden light. But I was up on top of like a peak in Patagonia. And, you know, as an artist too, it's like, there you can appreciate like the moodiness, the clouds, and like that whole feeling of, you know, not everything's sunshine and rainbows, and it doesn't need to be.
Right.
You like playing with the elements. You like the moodiness, the contrast, and it was still a really awesome experience. And I was so happy that it happened.
Yeah.
So
that's like totally worth it. The payoff was 100% worth waking up at 3 a.m., hiking through the rain and the snow. And those photos were really cool to see too.
Yeah, it's just like there's such a vibe of like moodiness and clouds and fog and just like almost monotone where everything's just kind of gray. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different like feeling.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah.
One last thing before we go, because I know you got to get going for this event tonight, but for people who are watching this or listening to it, where can they go check out this film? Because obviously they're not going to be able to make it to the premiere tonight.
Worldwide premiere.
Worldwide.
Yeah, so I'm still like debating if I want to do a festival run with this or not. I don't think, you know, and who knows, you know, I shouldn't sell myself short, but like I think it has a really good chance of getting into like smaller niche, like adventure travel film festivals. You know, there's film festivals like ocean themed, there's film festivals, free diving, scuba diving. So I'm kind of really debating about, do I not put it up online for like a year and do a small festival run with this, or do I put it up online on my YouTube channel? Yeah, that's where it's ultimately going to go eventually, is on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm still kind of debating like what do I want to do with this film? TBD. Yep.
Well, when it's up there, we'll give you a shout out.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks for coming on and chatting, and yeah, can't wait to see the film tonight.
Thanks, man.
All right. Bye.